And in fact, just to let you know how ridiculous the system is that when we would win a case on one of these permit appeals, we would have the lawyers from some of the biggest corporations in the country come over to us, who are representing the company, and thank us for finding the gaps, omissions, and deficiencies in the permit application. Because the lawyers could then bill more hours to the corporation than had put in the permit application to actually patch the holes that we had found in the application itself. So the lawyers from the other side were actually coming up and thanking us for doing what we were doing in terms of helping the corporations build new improved permit applications under the law. Well, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, corporation would come back. This time they have a new improved permit application that would patch the holes. The community group would come back to us and they'd say, Mr. Lindsay, we need you to do that jujitsu again that you did the first time around to get that permit application out. And we were faced with looking back at the community group and saying to them, we're sorry. There's nothing for us to do anymore. There's nothing we can do anymore because all the levers are gone. We don't have anything to use anymore in the law to actually try to stop that permit from issuing or for that facility from going into the community. Now, to shorten the story here, sometimes that cycle lasts 10, 12, 20 times. There was a community in Pennsylvania that went back and forth on permit appeals for something like 18 different permit appeals until the Walmart Corporation finally got it right and then was able to put their facility into this particular community. So it's an endless hamster wheel in some ways, except it does end. And it ends with projects being shoved into these communities. So even though we had a win-loss record, you know, when you look at our sheer, how many times did you win in front of the judge on the permit appeals themselves, we had a record of something like 155 to 3 in terms of a win-loss record. But if you actually set foot in the communities where we were doing the work, where we had clients, you would have seen absolutely no resemblance between that community and our win-loss record because they were getting the factory farm and the toxic waste incinerator and the pipeline and everything else because we weren't stopping anything, right? We weren't stopping anything. And in fact, environmental law isn't about stopping anything. It's actually about making sure the regulations are enforced that are in place. The sad little fact that sometimes we try to ignore is that it's the corporations that are ostensibly regulated by the regulations who actually wrote the regulations. Right? So it's the corporations that are active in the legislature have the wealth and the power and the lobbyists and the experts and everything else who actually write the solid waste regulations in the state of Pennsylvania. So in essence, what you're doing as a citizens group when you walk in to do a permit appeal is you're enforcing the corporation's own regulations against them. Right? Because we didn't write them. We didn't write the script. You know, the corporations wrote the script. I used to work in state government in Pennsylvania, and I would watch as the agribusiness corporations wrote the legislation governing the agricultural industry in the state and hand it off to those folks on the Senate and House Agriculture. I think at a knee-jerk level, we understand some of that, most of that maybe, that we don't control that process. Yet we seem to be so eager when a corporate project comes in to actually try to use the corporation's regulations against them. Right? How crazy is that? Right? Do we think that the corporations who wrote the regulations in the first place are actually going to allow us a remedy within the regulations they wrote for us to say no to their project? Right? You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and over again and expecting a different result. How long are we going to actually fight under the script that's written for us? So that our defense of our community is actually rooted in the rules that have been written by the very corporation that's attempting to exploit our community. Right? But that's what environmental law is today. It's why 45 years after the major environmental laws were passed, 45 years ago, that things are worse now by almost every major environmental statistic than they were 45 years ago. Right? It's wrapped up into that same line. About this time when we were getting ready to say enough with the regulatory system, someone said, the spokesperson, the speaker from Wisconsin said something that stuck with me till today. She said, the only thing that environmental regulations regulate are environmentalists. The only thing environmental regulations regulate are environmentalists because they make us predictable. They make us predictable as to how we attempt to stop those corporate projects coming in. So I at least thought, after all that we were at least costing the corporations money. Because when you appeal the permit, the corporation has to hire a law firm. The law firm's getting paid a lot more than we are to come in to actually defend the permit on behalf of the corporation. It was then that I learned that the monies that the corporations spend on the permit appeals to defend their permits is tax deductible. It's tax deductible as a reasonable and necessary business expense under the law. It's tax deductible. It's structural in some way. We came to a real decision point in our office. We said, is this what we're about? Is helping corporations build better permit applications? We said no, but we didn't know what else to do. So we actually started closing down the legal defense fund. We had other better things to do than to do this work. It's unfortunate at that point in time, though, that one community